Welcome back. All right. I started this playlist talking about my favorite Vancouver Canucks. Now let's move on to my favorite Ottawa Senators. And I like the Senators. This is the weird part. I do. Although right now there are some Sens fans that are mad at me. So we'll see if my 20 favorite Ottawa Senators could lead to that as well. Honorable mention to Clark MacArthur. Just barely misses the top 20 list for this year. This is updated from the 2020 list I did 5 years back. At number 20 on the list, a defenseman who played forever with the Ottawa Senators, Chris Phillips. Gave an honest effort every night. He was a number one draft pick that you wouldn't think of him as a number one draft pick by his game, but he played there for a very long time. Rightfully kind of a legend in Ottawa circles. And so, yeah, Chris Phillips, number 20. Number 19. Dropping quite a bit. And you know what? It's funny. Ryan Dzingel is an example of a player that I will just say, you know what? I like this player a lot. He's third liner, fourth liner. Doesn't matter. I really like the player. And Ryan Dzingel, it's the effort. The effort level was always there with Ryan Dzingel, and I think he played his best games as a member of the Ottawa Senators. Number 18 on the list. I believe he was an original Ottawa Senator, this one. Let me make sure I spell this one right. Norm McIver. Norm McIver had a good run with an Ottawa Senators team that wasn't very good. And so McIver definitely gets consideration from me. Early on, those Ottawa Senators, I was rooting them on. There was very little in the way of winning. Winning was, I guess it was an option, but it was an option they didn't choose very often. So there's that. Number 17 on the list, recent-ish in terms of the lit names on this board, Kyle Turus. Kyle Turus played his best hockey as a member of the Ottawa Senators. He got traded out of Ottawa. In hindsight, I think it was a mistake both by the player and by the team because he never really seemed to get his game back after that initial trade out of Ottawa. And I like Turus. I still think he was a very good second-line center at his peak, so Kyle Turus, for me, gets number 17 on the board this year. Number 16, a current member of the team. So this is always the issue when I'm doing favorite players. I don't like to put the same players on more than one list. I kind of feel like it's a cheat. For example, if Mike Sillinger, if I wanted to, I could put him on 12 lists. Feels like it's a bit of a cheat, doesn't it? But Claude Giroux has been such a prominent part of the Ottawa Senators, and I think the addition of Claude Giroux signaled that this team was ready to come out of the rebuild, and they made the playoffs, and Giroux's role with the team definitely helped, and he's really clearly enjoyed playing in Ottawa. He has signed a new contract there, so I don't see any reason to think Giroux's going anywhere anytime soon. And I think that says a lot to the locker room when you're willing to stick around, when you could go somewhere else. And maybe you could sign for less and go somewhere else. And I don't mean sign for less, like I don't think his contract's that high, but I just mean like you could take one of those Corey Perry type or the contract guys take down in Florida towards the end of their career. Like, yeah, I'll just take the league minimum because I want a shot at a Stanley Cup. Number 15 on the board. Marian Hossa. Unfortunately, Marian Hossa's career in Ottawa was far shorter than it should have been. I liked Hossa quite a bit. He was one of their draft picks that really took off. Of course, he would win Stanley Cups in Chicago, which is of little solace to Ottawa Senators fans. And Marian Hossa probably ends up on the board when I get to Chicago as well. It's just, there isn't really a way for me to do this without picking some of the same players twice. So Marian Hossa gets on the board at number 15 for his time with the Ottawa Senators. Number 14. Radek Bonk. Now, Radek Bonk has an all-time name in the National Hockey League. And it's a reason why I want Oliver Bonk to make it to the NHL. So I can say there was a Bonk and now there's a Bonk. Now, if they'd played together in the National Hockey League, it could have been Bonk Bonk. But either way, I digress. Radek Bonk, outside of having an all-time name, was a pretty good player too. And he gradually made that improvement at the NHL level. Initially, it looked like he might be a bust. And then, yeah, his game came together. He is one of those reasons that I learned as a younger fan, you can't write somebody off as a bust too early because they can turn it around, especially if they're in their early 20s and you hear people talking about them as a bust like they're terrible. Guys like 21, 22, right? So number 13 on the board. There's a perception right now that I hate Jake Sanderson. I don't get it, because I rooted for Jeff Sanderson when he was a Vancouver Canuck. I think Jake Sanderson is worth every penny that the Ottawa Senators are paying him. And if you look back at the video where they signed Jake Sanderson, I said in that video that I liked the cap hit for Sanderson, while there were a lot of people in the comments saying he's not worth it, he's overrated, he's a bum. And so here we are. Jake Sanderson, for me, in terms of my favorite members of the team all time, I have Jake Sanderson number 13. And I think the sky's the limit. I did not have him in the top 20 defensemen. You're right. Does not mean I don't like the player. And it does not mean I overlooked the player. I just did not have him in my top 20 this year. Next summer, that could change. I'm not going to make any guarantees because who knows? Maybe he gets hurt this year. Maybe he has an off year. You just never know. But either way, Sanderson as a favorite as a number 13. Number 12. Another player you're going to see on a second list. Yeah, when I get to Vegas, Mark Stone's on the list. Mark Stone, honest effort every night, great two-way forward. I still think, while I understand Ottawa did this full teardown, I think trading Mark Stone was a mistake. I think they should have kept Mark Stone through that rebuild. I would go as far as to say they probably should have kept a few veterans through that rebuild, and maybe it wouldn't have taken 28 years to get back to the playoffs. I think Stone was willing to stick around, and then they trade him to Vegas, and all of a sudden, everybody in Vegas and around the National Hockey League realizes how good he is. I had a good idea of how good he was when he was in Ottawa. Number 11. So, Wade Redden wasn't originally drafted by Ottawa. They drafted Brian Berard, and then there's a trade. Redden ends up in Ottawa. Wade Redden was fantastic in Ottawa. Now, eventually, there's a point where they're choosing between Chara or Redden, and they kept Redden, and they let Chara go to Boston. Bit of an error. I don't have Chara on the board for Ottawa. I don't. I feel like Chara's best game was in Boston. He will be on the list when I do the Boston one. Spoilers and all that, but Wade Redden definitely gets into the number 11 spot for me this time around. Number 10. One of the all-timers for the Ottawa Senators, Jason Spezza. Spezza, honest effort, yes. Supremely talented forward. He benefited from the lockout season of 05-06. Or 04-05, I should say. Spent that year in the minors and was clearly more ready for the National Hockey League when that was done. And towards the end of his career, Spezza didn't do anything to dissuade me from the idea that he was one of my favorite players, in that he was willing to take less money, he took on a leadership role, he was willing to play bottom 6 minutes. Spezza was not a selfish player. And that's one thing that when I do these favorites, there are players that I might exclude because the perception at the time may have been that the player was selfish. So there's that. Number 9. Character matters when I'm doing my favorites. Number 9. Thomas Chabot. So it says a lot right now about Ottawa's blue line that I have both Sanderson and Chabot in my favorites. And I considered Chabot for that list of defensemen as well. I like Thomas Chabot's game a lot. I think that he is a really good defenseman on this team. I think he has been a good foot soldier during some rough times, and now things are better, and hopefully things continue to get better in Ottawa. I'd love to see them in a top 3 spot this year. And hopefully guys like Chabot and Sanderson. And is there any other current Sen on the board? No, just those 2 so far. Well, let's go ahead and fix that. Number 8 does not fix that. JG Pajot. JG Pajot is another example of a player that I think if Ottawa had kept him through the rebuild, he could have played further up in the lineup. He gave a good effort. He was very popular with the crowd. He's still playing. That's the thing. JG Pajot and Mark Stone are both still playing. They'd be very useful still to this point with the Ottawa Senators if they'd been kept. So Pajot's a player that I like a lot, and even though he's not as good right now as he was, say, when he was with Ottawa, I still think JJ Pajot is a very serviceable forward. Number 7 on the list. Man. Okay, I'm going to try to write this without looking. It's tricky. Curtis Lecision. The first time I saw that name, how was that I pronounced it? Lecision? I was just, what is this name? So Curtis Lecision, much easier to say it that way. It's not spelled the way that it looks. But at any rate, one of my favorite defensemen, defensive defenseman, never like a number one guy, but I thought he was a good shutdown defenseman, and I really enjoyed his play. That's basically it. Curtis Lecision, I've got it number 7. Number 6, goaltender. Not a lot of goaltenders on this list. No, and Linus Ullmark is not on the list. But Craig Anderson is. Craig Anderson became kind of a folk hero in Ottawa, rightfully so. Not on the same level as Andrew Hammond, the Hamburglar that one year, of course, who is not on the list either. But Craig Anderson gave them some of the best years of his career, and he never complained either when things were going rough for the team that I can remember. Inspirational story for the team as well. But Anderson, I don't remember him being a goaltender that ever was like, oh, the grass is greener, I'm going to go in that direction. And it would have been understandable at times for Anderson to have that attitude. It would have been understandable. Number 5. Here's a current Ottawa Senator. Finally, and it's Tim Stutzler. I love Stutzler's game. I think that from that draft, Stutzler, an absolute steal for the Ottawa Senators. Proof you don't have to draft first to get a really good player. Just have good scouts and pick the right guy. Stutzler was the right guy. And if this team takes that next step in the playoffs, it's going to be guys like Stutzler that get them there. So, Tim Stutzler, a player that I like quite a bit. And there he is, number 5 on the list. Number 4. So, my reputation is as somebody whose favorites are odd. And Marc Methot being number 4 might be seen as odd. Marc Methot's defensive game covered for Erik Carlson perfectly. And Methot was just fantastic during his time in Ottawa. I loved his defensive game. And so, full respect for Methot. Those defensive defensemen for me sometimes can be the best, my favorite players. Not the best, but my favorites. And that's where people get tripped up with my list sometimes. That is my favorites. Doesn't necessarily mean best. Number 3. That being said, sometimes it helps to be the best. And Daniel Alfredson, you know, one thing that's helped in terms of my fandom of him is now that he's back with the organization and he's been willing to be part of the organization again, I think that's huge. I think that's something that definitely helped in their journey back to the playoffs. Just the fact that, you know, you have a veteran player who retired but comes back to the organization after kind of an ugly divorce when he went to Detroit. So it's nice to see Alfredson as a part of the organization again. And there we go. Number 2. So the runner-up, this won't surprise anybody. Absolutely no one will be surprised that Ron Tugnut's name on the board is on the board. I think it'd be more alarming if he wasn't. Ron Tugnut, one of my favorite goaltenders ever, played for some bad teams over his career. Another one that I never heard complain during all the losing, especially in Quebec. But in Ottawa, he had a good run in Ottawa, and I liked him. So yeah. I guess for an honorable mention amongst goaltenders, Patrick Lalime can get an honorable mention. And his mask would probably be the best. The Marvin the Martian mask was fantastic for Lalime. But Tugnut was pretty darn good too. So who's number 1? Same player who was number 1 the last time I did this. So I understand that Erik Carlson's exit from Ottawa when he went to San Jose wasn't the most pleasant of experiences for a lot of Sens fans. But Erik Carlson, to me, is still that 2017 run when he was basically on one leg. Absolutely insane. How many minutes he played, how fearless he was. I don't think he's been the same since then. I don't think Erik Carlson's been the same. And he has had that one fantastic season in San Jose. I would still put the 2017 Erik Carlson above that Erik Carlson in terms of overall play. While I understand the complaints about his defensive game at this stage, and I won't disagree at points with some of the defensive play, I did think back in the mid 2010s, around 2015 and whatnot, I thought his defensive miscues, while they were there, I thought they were overblown a little bit. I thought he was a pretty good defensive defenseman. Not great, not perfect. Not Jacob Slavin level or Marc Methot level, but having Methot as his partner definitely helped. So if Carlson made a mistake, Methot was there to cover for it. And so Carlson played with confidence, and that's one of my favorite pairings ever in hockey as well. So to me, Erik Karlsson would still be number one in terms of my favorite Ottawa Senators. So there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Like and subscribe in the event you may not have done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support as always. I will talk to you again soon.